Now we have a presentation from two speakers. First, Bianca and Kremer, that is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Working Schools Blockchain and Digital Assets Project, also PhD, in the Central University, with research focusing on the legal impact of blockchain and the related legal philosophical implications. And also we have Wang, assistant professor of the Universidad Local, and the Doctor of Science in APH Zurich. His research interests include blockchain, financial technologies, human-computer interaction, security, and game theory. They both submit their paper, popular paper on DAOs and DeFi attacks to our papers. So thank you so much for your interest in our conference, and I give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Wang, for the wonderful Thank you so much, Wang, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you, Antonio, Martha, and Manuela, and Tim for inviting us here. We get this together for the first time, really, after a long time discussing this on Zoom. So, yeah, we're from China, and I'm from the US. So, thank you so much for making this happen today. So we are really excited to share with you some insights and DAOs and DeFi attacks. And Nate's going to start with a bit of background on DeFi and DeFi attacks, and then we'll give you a bit of background on the regulatory mechanics.
Thanks, Bianca, for initiating this wonderful introduction. So I'm Wang from the University of Macau. So the differences from me or other participating this conference that I'm majoring in computer science but not in law. So I consider the DAO and we talk about the tax and incidents there. So maybe we'll start actually, last week there was also a conference in Hong Kong, so it's called Web3 Festival. So it's like almost 10,000 people joining this conference and participated in and there's a lot of industry guys and also guys. It's just because the Hong Kong government just released a lot of new regulations on Web3, and they say Web3 will be a new thing in the future in Hong Kong. So this demonstrates a trend in what happened in the world is actually digital asset is becoming a very, very important thing for everyone in the world. So it's not only about we have some accounts or something in the social media or some other Web2 website, but it's more like that we will own something. We will own our own properties in the internet, in the cyber spaces. So that's making us to think about the Web3 very a thing in the future. And one of the most important, application or we say ecosystem in the Web3 is called DeFi. It's abbreviation for decentralized finance. So it's actually decentralized finance is a financial ecosystem that has been developed on the blockchain system with a smart contract. So with since 2018 and until now, around like 4 years development, actually there's a lot of different kind of financial applications have been developed on the blockchain system. So some of them are like very similar to our traditional financial services, such as exchanges and liquidity, but also there's a lot of innovative financial applications here. For example, we have the liquidity staking, and also we have the mushroom, and there's a combination about this traditional finance and this new finance actually makes the DeFi world very different from the traditional world. And a lot of computer scientists, economists, and also people from the finance are looking into this kind of new financial market. And there's a lot of interesting interests and also a lot of interesting startups emerging. And one of them is that we will discuss today about the DeFi attacks. So DeFi now is really the same. As I said, we can see that until 2022, actually, the total value locked in DeFi exceeds 200 billion. So it slightly dropped this year, but we believe that because of the lot of government, for example, like Hong Kong, Singapore, they have even some government level of applications, and being implemented in the blockchain system. So we believe that in the future, DeFi will become more and more intriguing, and more people will join this new area of the finance. But although that DeFi is some new and interesting things, actually there's also some problem that we can ignore. So one of the most important problems in DeFi is the security challenges. So this is a study that has been conducted with my colleagues and I, and we published it in a research conference. We investigated that decentralized finance happened in the two major blockchain systems. One is Ethereum, another is Binance Chain. So actually, we started with the DeFi attacks that appears from 2018 April until the April 2022, and we find that actually, so we collect all the information from these resources, the revenues, numbers, and percent, and in total we found 181 attacks during these 4 years, and in total it result in 3.24 billion US dollars. So it's really a significant financial losses in the DeFi world. Because we need to remember that the TVL in the DeFi is just 200 Bitcoin. So it means like almost 1% of the money in the DeFi has been stolen or have been hacked during these 4 years. So this also make a lot of computer scientists and also economists think about the DeFi attacks and think about how can we prevent the attacks and to make the DeFi more secure and more people can use this financial to join this new ecosystem. So one potential solution that to think about is DAO. So why DAO is a potential solution? One reason is that almost every popular DeFi applications they have a DAO in their. So for example, we list with 5 major applications in the 23, and most of them have the DAO. So it's include the making DAO very Uniswap, Kremer, and legal. So another important reason to consider DAO and the DeFi is actually these two things are quite similar. So when we talk about decentralized finance, we're talking about a financial ecosystem without any centralized operators. Control the user's assets in the financial market. And when we're talking about DAO, this is also a decentralized organization. So it is very natural to think about, okay, DAO can be implemented in the DeFi world. So another reason that was to take DeFi as an example to study the relationship between the security issues in DeFi and the DAO is that actually DeFi now is the most popular. Most of the DAOs are implemented in DeFi. So compared to other Web3 activities. So we believe that our study on the DeFi securities and DeFi attacks and its relationship with the DAO can be like the pilot study. And we will also inspire future work that in this Web3 and other Web3 applications. So after all this background, our motivations. So we know that DeFi is very important. There's a lot of security challenges in DeFi, and also we know that almost every DAO or every DeFi application has a DAO. So then it's very straightforward for us to have such kind of discussions. So first is about how DAOs can involve in DeFi. Second is that what role of DAOs play in DeFi attacks, and how to prevent, mitigate, and respond to the DeFi attacks currently. And the last is how should we regulate DAOs in DeFi and to make DeFi more secure. So let's start from our first business country. So actually we find that DAO plays 2 different kind of roles in open DeFi and also in the DeFi attacks. So both from the positive perspective and also from the negative perspective. So from the positive perspective, we consider that DAOs can have some actions before an attack, during an attack, and after the attack. So before an attack, it can place as the preventive measures, and during an attack, there are some emergency DAOs mechanism to help the users to mitigate the attack and to even have some reactions with the attackers, and also action attacks. Some DAOs to imply some security threats, such as like the user reimbursement or other white hat actions to improve the DeFi applications, or you can make reduce the financial losses of the users. So apart from this positive perspective, we also find that DAO negative perspective in DeFi attacks as well. So today I heard a lot. I was going to talk about DAO attacks. So actually here we have a very kind of different definition about DAO attack. So I still remember that I discussed a lot of attacks that people call DAO attacks. But actually we find that most of the attacks called DAO attacks is not really influenced by DAO. It's just happened in the DAO applications. So here we talk about DAO attacks, we really because that people utilize the DAO mechanism. For example, we propose a malicious proposal, and we make this malicious proposal go through and to make attacks on the DeFi application. So this is very different from other types of the DeFi attacks. So I haven't shown it here, but actually with our previous studies about the DeFi attacks, we classify the DeFi attacks into 5 different layers. So for example, like the smart contract layers, DeFi protocol layers, blockchain system layers. But actually, in my opinion, that the DAO attacks is not very related to any of these layers, because this is not the wrong design of the application itself, or it's even not a code error in the application in smart contract. Actually, just because of DAO, some people get the power which is much beyond what they should be, what they should have. And this definitely changed what happened in the DeFi ecosystem. Okay, so then I will go into details and to discuss our understanding about this, not only from the positive perspective, but also from the negative perspective about DAO involvement in the attacks. So to understand this DAO DeFi, actually utilize the data set that we have. I just showed you this 181 attacks in over 4 years. So what we did is that we researched every DeFi applications that have been attacked. We search for whether this attack has been attacked, and we also go through all the DAO. So we research whether these DeFi applications have been done. And also we go through all the DAO proposals that have been made in these DeFi applications. So actually, we categorize all these DeFi proposals into three different levels. So some proposals are on the organization level, as they're trying to propose something that changes the organization of the DAO itself. So for example, like the treasury pool management, governance mechanism update, and personal management. And also there's some proposals that target on the community level. So the community level, we say community level is more about all the users of the applications. So for example, they have some event organizations within the community, and also they have the industry project operation. The most interesting part, and we think that related to the DAO attacks, or we say the preventive measures without the project level. So we have this like 2 examples of the project levels of proposals that we made in the DAO activities that we started in this project. So we find some of the proposals to propose something to modify the protocol parameters, and some also makes the version active. So we can, this is very straightforward that these 2 kind of proposals can help with the security of the DeFi applications. But we still find there's a lot of limitations about this kind of DAO involvement within the interacting with DeFi attacks. So the most important thing that we find make these things not very effective is about the information exchange. Because as you may all know that DAO actually is something public. So it's not just say only a few people will join or participate in DAO, but actually a lot of people, all the whole community has the ability to join the DAO. So then the problem is that, okay, when we make a proposal, when we want to make the project more secure, when we find the bugs in the DeFi applications, and we make a proposal, then this information is not only accessible for all good users, right? But it's also accessible for all the malicious users. So then the problem is that if we want to make a DAO proposal, we have several rounds of discussions. We have voting in some of the applications, and we have temperature checking. So it might take a long, very long time from a proposal happen to a proposal implemented. But from a malicious user perspective, they can directly get this information, and they can take actions without any restriction, which makes this kind of before attack preventive measures is not as effective as we thought. So because of this information revolution. So the second thing that we talk about from the positive perspective is called emergency DAO. So we say that during the attack, actually there are some different applications. They have a new organizational mechanism. They have this emergency DAO. So the emergency DAO is slightly different with the public DAO, say the common DAO. So the emergency DAO actually is just a very small group of users. So they can take action very fast. So this is very different from the thing that I just mentioned, that there's a lot of DAO. When you make a proposal, you need a lot of time to receive support, you need voting, and then you need to implementation. But with the emergency DAO, actually, it can be very fast. If a DAO attack happens, actually, they can try to update the DeFi application, immediately, or they can even contact with the blockchain operators very fast to prevent these hackers to transfer their funds that they receive. But also, here comes the problem. It is still a DAO. If we have this emergency DAO, it seems that we do not have decentralization anymore. If we really want to DAO, the DAO mechanism or DAO organization in the DeFi. So you can see that this emergency DAO actually is very centralized. With just a very small group of people to make decisions, to decide how to react to the DeFi attacks. So this remains. I do not consider this is like some technical issues, or it comes from not very effective, but it's more like a philosophy perspective, not very fit with the idea of the DAO. And the last development about the DAO involvement with DeFi attacks is after the attack. So apart from the several topics that we find with the DAO proposals that people made to the applications, we find actually there are some unique DAO proposals also being implemented and proposed by the users when after the attack happened. So, for example, from the project level, there might be there are some proposals to say, okay, because of the attack happened, we need to fix that. So then we need to upgrade the contract. And also from the communication level, they will issue some user reimbursement project. So they will give the money back to users, and also they might have some white hat bounty to hire some people with more knowledge and more advanced techniques to help them to resolve these issues generated by the DeFi attacks. But also, we find the problem here is from two perspectives. First, about responsibility. So actually, as we say that DAO is kind of slow process, especially in the DeFi, under the DeFi, because in DeFi you can imagine that the price is changing every 10 seconds, every block. So, but for DAO, actually, it might be like 1 week or 2 weeks that an action can be really implemented. So even so, in my opinion, maybe in the normal financial world, 1 week is not like slow to bit, but in DeFi, it's definitely not enough. as I said, your money might be lost. You just have to wonder. So and another thing that actually some proposals that people made after the DAO attack, it cannot be easily realized by all users. So let's think about the user reimbursement. Who gives the money back, right? So there must be some like very powerful people in this community. They need, I mean, they have some power. They need to have this power to support all these responses, these proposals. Then this can be some response to the DeFi attack. So which means that we find that it's not very kind of common, or not everyone can make the DAO proposals after the attack. So then, after talking about this positive perspective from the DAO involvement with the DeFi attacks, and also our understanding about this involvement. So the another thing is that we're talking about the DAO-based DeFi attacks. So as we say that the DAO-based DeFi attacks here, they really implement some malicious proposals to implement some like malicious behaviors. So for example, like let's see this example out of the Beanstalk. So it happened like 1 year ago. So the attackers make 2 attack proposals. So they're trying to transfer money from to their own account. So it's very interesting because these attackers try different proposals. First is just the plain proposal. They say we would like to donate money to the Ukraine. But actually, there's no IP content. Actually, this is just an input proposal and nothing happened. And then immediately, this guy used a very similar proposal. So it's also call it say that this proposal is for donation to Ukraine, but actually the money is transferred to the proposal address. So we can say about it, it's impossible for a DeFi project to have such a kind of design to say, okay, someone can directly transfer all the money to single account. But because of this DAO, because they consider the final result of DAO is the consensus of the whole community, the attackers can realize such kind of crazy activity. And also, we realize that this is the reason of the success of this attack is that the DAO of the Beanstalk, they do not have like the control or the validation after the proposal had been approved. But we go back to the question that we have, right? So if we need several steps to check whether the DAO proposal is malicious or not, then the speed of the DAO is a problem. Okay, so this is another DAO-based DeFi attack. So it's the TSB token. So it happened 2 years ago. So actually, it's some people who gain a lot of, I would say, a majority of government token. So then it just directly links like 11.8 billion tokens to their own accounts. So, and because these guys have the majority of the government token, so this proposal can easily. So then the question is that how should we decide? How should we design a DAO mechanism? So it seems that even the majority voting is not a safe action that people can. It's not a safe mechanism that we can accept because this can be easily manipulated by some malicious. So then Bianca will share our ideas about how to regulate the DeFi. So this is the last slide I want to show. So first column is that it's extreme ideally effectiveness of the DAO in the DeFi attacks. Also, on the right is the statistic number that we have after starting our dataset. So actually, we find that although there's like 181 attacks, and these attacks just been applied in 169 DeFi projects, we find the majority of them have a DAO or have this role mechanism. So we cannot say DAO is useless regarding to DeFi attacks, but it definitely demonstrates that even though that we have the DAO mechanism using a DeFi protocols, it's still a very high probability that this DAO DAO mechanism may not help with the DeFi attacks. So that's why we think, okay, it's time for us to regulate DAO for the DeFi. And the time is for Bianca.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, dear. So today we've already talked a bunch about, the road to decentralization. That's just to kind of like recap what we discussed today a little bit and go into the discussion about how to regulate DAOs and DeFi more specifically. There are two main ways in which we can think about this road to decentralization. One is to reduce potential liability for developers and core teams and core DAOs. And this is really something that was also stated by the easy X protocol, which has a couple core litigation cases on the at the moment. And they actually stated that developers stated that the creation of a DAO would insulate the protocol from, quote, regulatory oversight and accountability for compliance with US law. So that's one of the reasons probably why this representation is taking on. Another one is, and this is really in line with the blockchain ethos of decentralization. So the decision-making power to kind of have the community have a sense of ownership and also, contribute. So our contributors get airdrops and get governance tokens. And they'll have kind of a stake in ownership in that DAO. An example that I would like to create is, when the pandemic hit in March 2020, the price of basically everything was red. So the whole crypto market just crashed. And MakerDAO was basically the great challenge. It's called the Black Thursday event. What really happened is that Maker's a lending protocol, and it's an over-collateralized protocol. So you can stake, and you can basically there are two tokens, Maker and Wang. They were also in that during that event where it basically crashed. And the users can withdraw loans from the platform and the stablecoin remains to a tie by pledging assets to purchase Maker. And what really happened is that this kind of over-collateralization did not really help in this case. It could drop so much that users lost a lot of money. So what's really interesting about this case is that you had something during the time in 2020 that's called the Maker Ecosystem Growth Fund. And it was a centralized entity that kind of controlled governance. It was really on the path to decentralization. And after that Black Thursday event, we could really see steps to take more aggressively towards full decentralization of the and also multi-collateral DAI happens, so you could also stake instead of only having as collateral Ether. You could also have USDC, which is kind of controversial in the community. So the users of the protocol are really happy with the losses, and so there was a class action lawsuit against Maker, and arguing that Maker-related entities, including this, Maker Ecosystem Growth Foundation, misrepresented risks and portrayed the collateral debt position as more secure than they were because they complied with collateralization. But the lawsuit was actually dismissed very recently in 2023. And the court judge said, so a U.S. District Court for the District of California, he dismissed the complaint saying that, quote, Maker Growth Foundation is not a proper defendant as it has been dissolved, and therefore lacks capacity to be sued. The plaintiff has failed to allege facts sufficient to support each of the claims for relief. So really that brings us to the question, and David is visiting again because of liability of DAOs, right? So when we're discussing the liability of DAOs, in the relation when it comes to DeFi more specifically, there are really two ways in which we think about the liability of DAOs. And we can think about direct liability and also secondary liability. When it comes to direct liability against smart contract code developers in the US, actually, the US software developers are protected under the First Amendment. So even so it was free speech. So software developers will have the First Amendment protection. So the start liability path is not the ideal one. Even if you held software developers liable, smart contract, I mean, it could be immutable, right? So we're talking about DeFi protocol. Once the smart contract is deployed on protocol, you cannot really modify it. So even if you hold liable or want to change something, you can't really. There's also a discussion that's ongoing which we need to catch, right? So, and the problem also would deter innovation. So if you have, just imagine, okay, like we're holding all of these software developers are reliable and who's going to do anything like code or say, or at least reveal the identity if they're coding. So it would really stifle innovation in a dramatic way. And then the second path would be secondary liability. And with secondary liability, it's even more complicated. I mean, of course, you don't want to go with direct liability, right? At least you try to avoid that. But with secondary liability, we're talking about really anyone that's ever involved with the DAO DeFi protocol could become liable. And this is also the discussion that's ongoing now with cases that we have in open words. But you know, anyone who holds governance token or has participated in any kind of governance proposal, has voted, or has not, you know, we had this discussion in the morning. Actually, you're just posting something like a board post, like, and then it's like, oh, you're just there, you're just said something. You're not even part of the community. But here, like, really, it's more about those people that are part of the community. And you also have sometimes these thresholds. You can only propose something if these people have the policy. A lot of times you have to actually hold governance issues to make a proposal. And you have to pass a certain threshold to make those proposals. Example to set liability on average administrators or really can control it. Majority holders, governance tokens. And you know, there's so many reports out there as well that so much of the governance tokens are housed by people that it's super concentrated. So that was just a chain analysis report in that as well, so that so just 1% or so of the governance holders actually have real power, which is concerning when we talk about decentralization and DAOs, right? And also most stakeholders, liquidity providers, finance and validators, so it's really the whole ecosystem of a DAO, if I can recall from the data, which is not the idea of and it's still like questions that we need to think about. And just coming back to like a historical perspective, I know David already alluded to the DAO hack, and you know, giving like a historical perspective will then inform us with what we would like to kind of a concept that we would like to introduce here. So having this like historical perspective, you know, the first viable DeFi application, if you think about it, was the DAO. And the DAO also had experienced kind of reverse DeFi attack. This kind of combination really of what we're talking about here. And it's also like a historical perspective because like in DeFi terms or like in crypto terms that's like, you know, ancient history. Because you haven't before. Like, you know, a month from now, the world will change in DeFi. So it was the developers of the protocol, they basically wanted to create a venture capital fund where anyone that buys those tokens in DAO could vote on which applications that would be interesting to then fund. But what happened is that there was a smart contract bug and an attacker exploited it and drained substantial amounts. And at the time, there was really a huge attack. Like the DAO itself would raise 150 million worth of ether, and 50 million had been hacked. So the community was really faced with so many questions. Some of those were, is code law or is code not law? And if code is law, then of course like, we can't do anything, just, you know. And actually what's really interesting about this case is that in terms of reference, or it said like if you accept to buy those tokens, you're actually accepting that code is law. So it actually was said in those terms. So it would be an interesting discussion to have. I know we don't have time for that, but to like delve more, like have a deep dive into this kind of discussion. But it's really interesting that the community really had this kind of difficult discussion in computer science. Actually, we met in 6 months of history. And, you know, we really see that computer science, you know, researchers sometimes really have this view of the world that code is law. And this is also really interesting, like from a legal perspective, to kind of get into the conversation and try to like kind of understand someone else's perspective in terms of like code law, okay, but you know, code is not law, actually, because law is law. And then you get into these, you know, by not real life. But so what happened then is that Ethereum and Ethereum classes split, and this basically informs us into what we would like to call systemically important DAOs and DeFi protocols. So why are we introducing this concept here? We're saying that this DeFi attack in 2016, what we could see there. I mean, Ethereum at that time was very new. It was not as developed as it is today with all of so many applications that we have now. But basically, what really happened is that we had a DAO that got hacked, and it implicated the whole blockchain ecosystem in terms of having the community have to decide, do we do a hash work now or not? Do we reverse it or not? So we are basically advocating for something like the systemically important DAOs and DeFi protocols, also not only informed by the historical perspective, but also looking into the future and thinking about if we have a financial system that is really, disintermediated based on DeFi, then we will have to think also really hard about, and this is really inspired by, the concept of systemically important financial institutions or systemically important critical infrastructure. And entities that fail, have a fallout, could really impact the entire ecosystem. So if you just think about right now, we have some of the DAOs that we have right now in DeFi that are already on this path. It's very important. Our MakerDAO, Uniswap, and I mean others as well. And these DAOs, they really provide essential services in DeFi. So stablecoin, decentralized chains, and others. And these DAOs were to suffer some cyber attack or DeFi attack, then it would really put the entire ecosystem at risk. So some possible criteria that we've been thinking about are, for example, the size of the DAO and its DAO application, the DAO and the DAO, the significance of it, how many applications are actually built on top, how many other users are actually building on top of that, specifically the DAO protocol, DeFi protocol. But so also the global reach. I mean, with these applications, it's really global from the beginning because you sometimes don't really know where you are placed. And also the interconnectedness. And if you think about those bridges between blockchains and also having those fractional tokens that can actually build bridges on other blockchains, and becomes even more important to think about them. And just to give you a summary of all the challenges that we're facing, which is just a snapshot of it, and there are many more. But what we can think about, and these are all characteristics that are not only DeFi related, but also DAO related, right? So we have decentralization as one of the challenges. So because if a DeFi protocol is really decentralized, then how are you going to regulate something that has no intermediaries? This is really something that comes with disintermediation nature. That is the last one that I put there, which is it's really difficult to identify a responsible party. And our regulatory regimes are really built around intermediaries, regulating those who are actually in the middle. And here, if you don't have anyone standing in the middle, what do you do? And also the concept of custodial nature is really a challenge because in DeFi you have you hold your own assets in your wallet. There's one you can go to and you can access and you having things done. And so even in that respect, it's also a challenge in terms of scalability of getting users that may not be so used to using these technologies actually also onboarding them. So it's not only a challenge for regulating, but also a challenge of having users on board through the ecosystem. Permissionless nature is another very important point to think about because think about it, all of these protocols running on open permissionless ledgers, such as Ethereum, anyone can enter it, anyone can hold governance tokens, but they can also get out of it. If you just imagine you have someone who had a bunch of governance tokens make decisions in a DAO, and the next day that had actually bad implications. The next day you just sell the tokens, they're not part of the DAO anymore. What does that mean? And also the algorithmic nature of not only DeFi, the underlying protocol, but also the DAOs. like really is a lot to think about, like also in terms of, it's actually the addresses that are the ones that needs to be done. So this is many aspects of that. So another thing that we would like to propose here is something that we like to think about, like this is smart regulation. And what do we mean by smart regulation? I mean, I was supposed to come to someone with like, computer scientists and lawyers get together, discussing this issue for like, time and time again. And it's like, how do we combine both? How do we move from code is law to code the law? So basically, how do we insert like our thinking about what the law is and we think about as law in our society is also coded in language, and code is a type of language. If you go that path, so how do we code law into the protocols? And one of the interesting things that we can think about, and these toolings are being developed already, is to think about real-time and more automatic detection of attacks and also responses. And then, so actually, if you think about it, and Ian has said about, we have the blockchain layer, we have all these different layers, that layer, smart contract layer, and also kind of a social layer. But what if we just integrate with the legal layer? Like, what would that look like? And can we do that? And also like offering some form of recourse mechanism. And when we think about it, we have the sub-DAOs with emergency DAO, but we have a sub-DAO that's a support layer. We think about that, and if so, what would that look like? Would that look like a decentralized mechanism, or would it look like more the types of court jurisdictions that we have in our economy? But if it's supposed to be decentralized, it's probably supposed to be kind of decentralized mechanisms. There are a couple out there. So the main takeaways that I would like to give you, and this is finally the final slide for you, so I don't know even how long we've been talking, we're probably taking over this entire session, and I'm really sorry, but these are basically our takeaways. So DeFi DAOs significantly outnumber any other Web3 DAOs, and DAOs face considerable challenges in navigating the targets, and systemically important DAOs and DeFi applications, something that we're like advocating for and kind of discuss with everyone. If you continue the conversation, and we would really like to get any feedback on that, and all the challenges that we basically face with regulating DAOs, and also thinking about how DAOs could potentially identify such systemically important infrastructures. And that maybe smart regulation could be a possible solution. And finally, the complexity increase, and really, in computer science, we talk so much about the complexity increase in DeFi. Basically, there are new things coming up all the time, which really necessitates interdisciplinary collaboration. So we'd really like to see more, interdisciplinary conversations between lawyers, computer scientists, scholars, and other disciplines, political science, as well as anyone really that's Mr. Knowledge is so interdisciplinary. So I think that's it.